um, and do all that healing work so that we could then build our relationship from the ground up. So if people want to get in touch with us, the best way to do that is probably through our website, and that is www.presentwaycoaching.com. And there you can find about us and also any events we've got coming up. There's free events there. There's lots of stuff.
Mm. So I'll just add a little bit.
Yes.
So through that process of a relationship at the start, marriage, children, and a range of different things, and then essentially a breakdown of our relationship and then a rebuild, we decided to become coaches because we had to seek so much help and find our way through. And we were reading resources and we were getting coached, and we also, found our own path. And through that process is when we decided to help other people because we saw so many other people having the same struggles we were, and that it was preventable. And how, at the end of the day, so oftentimes the struggles we were having in relationship weren't about one of us being bad people. It was about our interactions, our dynamic, and the issues we brought into the relationship. And we had no understanding. We were completely unaware of really how relationships actually even work. And we had 2 children. And really, we were essentially faced with the decision, do we work on ourselves and try and make this work? Because our children deserved their mum and their dad. And I'm not saying that separation and divorce is wrong. I'm just saying, because sometimes it's the best option. There are situations. But for those people who know there's a bit more to give, who know that there's more that they haven't tried, who know that they really want to keep going until they absolutely know in their heart of hearts, I can't make the relationship work. That's what we're all about. We're all about working with people who know there's more to give and who know that they really want to maintain their family unit, and will do that and get the help they need. So that's what we're about.
Thank you. And one thing I love about this interview is I have both partners, both people in it, and I get to ask them the questions because sometimes you see online is, I don't know if you guys experience this, you hear men complaining about all the things that they go through, but there's no women to for them to voice ideas, and then you have women complaining about what all the men are doing, but they don't have anyone to bounce ideas. So having you both here is a blessing. I guess my first true question then, and I start with the ladies first, if that's okay with Maria, is from a woman's perspective, what do you think are some of the obstacles that women face in a relationship? And then Justin, I can get it from a male perspective. What are some of the obstacles that men face in a relationship?
Yeah.
Great. I love this question, and I think it changes. I think a little bit in the season that you're in the stage of relationship that you're in. I think early on, when a woman finds a prospective partner and she's like, oh, this guy ticks my boxes and meets my needs, and I'm excited about my future, and he's speaking in the same sort of language, and they start making long-term plans and commitments. I think we dive all in, and I think we're very much, we're excited about a wonderful future, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think in those early stages, possibly the thing we sometimes can get caught up in is in a very deep nurture phase, and we nurture and nurture and nurture, possibly not always understanding that the person we fell in love with needs to grow and change and develop into who he's going to be. I think when children come along is probably the time when a woman first deeply struggles. Certainly that was the case for me. When I had children, all of a sudden I became incredibly vulnerable. And vulnerability is really difficult for a lot of women to feel because in our generally, I'm just speaking generally, but in our culture, generally, we now have very independent women. We are, we're standing on our own 2 feet. We're this strong woman. And that's what the man is definitely attracted to too. This go-getter. She's out there living her life, and he thinks it's wonderful, and it is. But when we first start to feel vulnerability, we need to lean into our relationship. We need to lean on our man, and all of a sudden we've got this new little being in our life that is that we instinctually know needs us, and we go through a major change in our lives on so many levels. So when we feel that vulnerability, we need to really rely on the relationship in a whole, and on our partner in a whole new way. And I think even more broadly on the larger group, the larger family, or the support network that we have around us. And I think that that stage needs a lot of communication, and that's something we missed. Then I think I guess the next sort of, in the next period of time, the major challenges start to really be that we don't understand what we've brought into the relationship. We often don't understand our love language, our attachment styles, these terms that a lot of people might have heard, and how that impacts our partner. The other thing I think women stumble around in is just how much parenting affects the man, the husband, and the father, and how he needs to change and grow and step into a new role in his life that sometimes he might be afraid of. He's also going to see us in a new light. All of a sudden we're dependent, all of a sudden we're not coping perhaps, and needing a whole nother level of care and security to really bring out our best so we can look after the children. And I know that's a joint role, but that's absolutely really fundamental in the dynamic. And I think then as it goes on, it's really about how we communicate our struggles, how we have those difficult conversations, and how we allow our husband or partner to grow, change, and develop, and creating space for him to do that, for creating space for him also to be vulnerable. So, and bring that into the relationship. So I think they're the major hurdles. They're big.
I think if I can throw one more in there, which I think a lot of women, this is something we've discovered on our journey, but I think there's a lot of women that probably aren't consciously aware of enough, maybe, and that is their need for safety.
Oh, yes.
You know, how unsafe a woman can feel in a relationship, whether her man's showing up or not. It's just part of her biology because of how we've evolved, that women feel unsafe in their nervous system a lot of the time, and a lot of that subconscious. And that was something that you had to really come to terms with as well. And then that leads into what Maria is saying about relying on the guy. Sometimes you can't because the guy's not showing up, but understanding that feeling within yourself to be able to, you know, start to calm your own responses down so you can get clarity rather than reacting from that.
And I will say the last part, I think, for me has really been really trusting my intuition and learning to listen to myself, learning to trust myself deeply. And so I'm forming a deep relationship with myself first, and then I can bring more of that to my partner and let that guide us, because that intuition, the feminine intuition and her vision, it's a beautiful gift to the relationship. But we have to be able to feel safe, to be able to feel it and communicate it in a healthy way, and that ends up being just such a gift into the relationship. All right,
and
that's
Justin,
a lot.
it is, but I love your answer, so thank you, Maria, for sharing that. And Justin, what do you think from a man's perspective, some of the obstacles that men face in their relationships?
I think the biggest challenge we face is feeling emotionally. And again, this comes from the way we've been conditioned. You know, there's the general story that, when you're a little boy, you're told, don't cry, don't be a sissy, don't be a girl, don't be this, whatever it is, we've been conditioned and taught, don't feel your feelings because that's weak. So a lot of guys feel this inherent weakness, and I certainly did too in our relationship. I was wounded as a child. We all go through a period of, our childhood where we take on certain wounds, beliefs, whatever that is. But then as we get into a relationship, we try and hide that. We try and make up for the fact that we're insecure, that we don't feel like a man, whatever that's meant to feel like. So we come up with all of these different coping strategies, and it's all really because we don't understand ourselves. We don't understand our feelings. We don't understand what our partner's triggering in us. And that's not to say they're deliberately triggering it, pardon me, but it brings stuff up in us that we've just got no language for. We're not in touch with what's happening within us. And therefore we go to certain coping strategies, which might be to control or to blame or to get angry or whatever that is. Avoid, which was my go-to, was just avoid and shut down. So that lack of emotional awareness, I think, is our biggest challenge, and that is not our fault. It's come through our conditioning, and you can definitely turn that around. You can definitely learn what your emotions are telling you. And I think that's the gift. Like when you really go deep enough in a relationship, that is the gift that the woman brings and that the partnership brings, is that you do end up healing each other. And this is the mirroring that we talk about, with people, is that your relationship ends up mirroring to you what you still need to work on within yourself. So I think the biggest challenge for guys is the cultural expectation of what a guy is, and the fit. And we inherently feel at the start, you kind of feel weak when you start to let your guard down, when you start to become vulnerable with yourself and start to look at your own feelings and realize, hey, there is, a part of me that's possibly a scared boy inside, that's vulnerable. We automatically feel weak. And then for us, there's the societal narrative that, that means you're less of a man, you're less worthy, whatever that is. We all have a different version or story of that. But that feeling, then again, it's another feeling that we have to process and understand. So
because you both made some really good points with Maria mentioned vulnerability and intuition, and sometimes, let's say, letting go of the reins and letting the man navigate the relationship. And then Justin, you made equally fantastic point where you're saying that, well, sometimes when men want to do that, they expose themselves as being weak, or maybe they're incapable of being the person that the relationship needs, or the woman that she needs, right? And when you're trying to regulate your emotions and your thoughts, well, you're not supposed to do it as a man, because then you're weak.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do you then think is missing between the two? Let's say this is a heterosexual relationship. What do you think is missing in regards to, let's say, the expectations of the relationship, or the conversation, communication of the relationship? What do you think is missing between those two?
I would say underlying all of that is awareness. There's Communicating is a skill that can be learned, but first we have to be aware of what we're trying to communicate, because quite often we're trying to communicate from a place of wounding. We're trying to communicate through defense. We're trying to communicate through not feeling good enough. So it's awareness of ourselves and what we're feeling to communicate the right thing. And we see this so often with people, is that we can all talk. There's no problem talking, but we're not communicating the right thing because we're not aware of these underlying dynamics of, Maria's already mentioned a few things: attachment styles, different needs we might have, which we can't verbalize because we don't have language for the actual need that we might have. So it comes out sideways when we try and talk. All of these things lead back at the root to awareness of certain layers